I was kind of expecting to see the Detroit Lions in there, CC. After falling to the Green Bay Packers in the opener, scoring just 13 points, the offense bounced back in a big way. 90 points total over the past 2 weeks versus the Bears and then the Ravens last night. A good opponent last night in the Baltimore Ravens, too, even though they looked uncharacteristically unlike themselves last night. I just thought maybe the Lions, who feel like they are right back there with the Motor City Muscle, might have made an appearance.
Yeah, but I can't unsee what I got in week one where they got out-physicaled and got dominated by that Packers defense. They were overwhelmed by Green Bay in that game, similar to how they overwhelmed the Baltimore Ravens last night. I'm going to give the Green Bay Packers somewhat of a pass because here's the thing. It's not as if all three phases of their team pulled a no-show in Cleveland. Their offense struggled, and the Cleveland Browns have arguably the best defense in all of football.
Right.
So your offense struggling against them people, you know, it can happen, especially when you're in that environment. And here's the deal. You still had a chance to win that game despite Jordan Love throwing a pick late.
Yeah.
They were going in for the game-winning field goal. It ended up getting blocked, which set up the Cleveland Browns game-winning field goal. So, I understand it's a bad loss for the Packers to the Cleveland Browns. It feels like they were overlooking an opponent. But even with that said, their defense still showed up in a major way against Cleveland. So I just think that the defense will be what carries the Green Bay Packers, and the offense has enough talent and enough good coaching to be able to figure it out.
We mentioned that there could be a quarterback change somewhere in the league for non-injury reasons. That somewhere is with the New York Giants, that they could be potentially open to a QB change moving on from Russell Wilson. Their head coach, Brian Daboll, addressed the media yesterday and addressed the QB situation with reporters.
Russ remains the starter moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, we're working through, all personnel decisions, and we'll do that over the next few days.
You're not saying Russ is the starter, right? You're saying you're still working through that?
Yeah, we're doing what we normally do, which is watch the tape. We're just watching it with the players right now. So, we'll have staff meetings after this, but when we come in, we watch the tape, offense, defense, kicking game as a staff, and then we go meet with the players. That's where we're at right now.
When you say what you normally do, most Monday afternoons, you know who your quarterback's going to be the upcoming week if everyone's healthy, though. It just seems a little different, your responses.
Yeah, well, look, we're going through the tape right now. We're evaluating everything.
So quarterback change is on the table.
I'd say we're evaluating everything.
There's Brian Daboll, the head coach of the New York Giants. Before we get to who the replacement is, let's talk about who the starter is. Can Russell Wilson be a backup?
No.
Okay, so if Russell Wilson is not the starting quarterback, one of two options. They release him, and they could do it positively, like, hey, for your sake, we don't want you to have to sit around here, or they try to trade him elsewhere.
If you're Russ, you want them to release you because there's an opportunity for you to go start somewhere else.
Where?
You threw it out there, the Cincinnati Bengals. Going into that organization, it's not going to upset the apple cart. It's not as if Russ presents a problem for them in their quarterback room in 2026. It is a Band-Aid on a bad situation with Jake Browning as your guy for the majority of the game. So, yeah, if you're Russell Wilson, it is what it is. At this point, you're a bridge quarterback. You're a very, very decorated bridge quarterback, but nonetheless. And so I just think that if you're the New York Giants, if Russ isn't your starter, then Russ isn't on the team. It ends up being Jaxson Dart with Jameis Winston as your backup.
All right, so then let's listen to what Brian Daboll had to say about the possibility of the rookie first-round pick out of Ole Miss, Jaxson Dart. Is he ready to start?
Well, we put him in the game for the last 2 weeks, so we wouldn't put anybody in the game we don't feel confident with.
Doesn't mean he's ready to start in their eyes. As we've heard from Dan Graziano, who's going to join us in about a half hour or so, that ESPN NFL reporter and insider, that they have a specific timeline based on whatever those things are that Jaxson Dart has to hit, those accomplishments, obviously practice-based, I would assume, work ethic-based, whatever those things are. If he has not accomplished those, I've been saying all along, I wonder if they just start Jameis and then still wait for Jaxson Dart to accomplish those things. And you could say...
There's no way they could do that. Not from a PR standpoint. Otherwise, why was Jaxson Dart your number 2 quarterback?
Yeah.
There's no way that they can make a change at the quarterback position and go with Jameis over Jaxson Dart. No shot. There's no shot. Jaxson Dart has to be the guy. And let's not understate the influence of ownership in this situation. Now, I'm not going to purport this to be fact, but I will say this. It was a tough optic watching MetLife Stadium with all the Kansas City Chiefs fans in the house.
Yeah.
It's tough for ownership to hear in the first half, we want Dart after Russell Wilson throwing a pick trying to hit Wan'Dale Robinson. It's tough for ownership to digest Russell Wilson in the red zone, knowing your team is down late in the game, throwing the ball out of the back of the end zone on 4th down. You're going with the veteran quarterback, so the guy under center doesn't make those types of mistakes. What we saw from Russ on Sunday, those were rookie mistakes. Throwing a jump ball up to Malik Neighbors in the corner of the end zone that had no chance at being completed, ends up getting picked, that was a rookie mistake. Russ has got to find a way to be better against opponents not named the Dallas Cowboys. And as we saw in week 3, when you put up the numbers against the Dallas Cowboys, doesn't mean much. And so I could absolutely see a scenario where the Giants, as an organization, knowing that the Chargers are rolling into their building, Justin Herbert, a quarterback who they wanted back in 2019, a guy that ended up going back to school when the Giants were poised to draft the quarterback to replace Eli Manning. I could see a world where Giants brass wants to show off their shiny new toy because the guy who Giants fans thought they were getting once upon a time in Justin Herbert is now with Jim Harbaugh playing at an MVP level and going to be on full display at MetLife Stadium. So, again, I think it's time to turn it over to Jaxson Dart. The Giants need a spark. They need somebody that can be a force multiplier, and it's clear that Russell Wilson is no longer that quarterback.
Yeah, you can't go with Jameis Winston if you move on from Russ. You simply cannot. That's an odious approach because...
Odious.
It means pointless. It's pointless. What's the point of going with Jameis Winston? It's pointless. Yes, it is the word of the day. Shout out to odious. But if you're moving on from Russ, it's because, as you said, you need a spark. You know who Jameis Winston is. You do not know who Jaxson Dart is. The fans want Jaxson Dart. You have a regime who's trying to save their jobs. Jameis Winston is not going to do that. It's only Jaxson Dart. And by the way, forget sparking the fans. How about sparking the guys in the locker room? They're going to get that with Jaxson Dart. We saw how they responded to him in the preseason. He's already been out there in some spots during the regular season. He wouldn't be utilized in that way if they weren't considering bringing him in. And for Brian Daboll to sit there and say we're evaluating everything, it's similar to the rhetoric we saw from him when they moved on from Daniel Jones. It's time. It's time for them to open their hearts to Dart, CC.
I'm curious to know, are they protecting Jaxson Dart or are they protecting their plan? I'm trying to figure out why Brian Daboll is not open to letting everybody know that a quarterback change is on the table. Because it's clear that one guy is your future and one guy is not.
Right.
I think he did that yesterday.